I believe, maybe erroneously, that one of the reasons why we have difficulties in acknowledging inequality is, of course, the ideology of the American dream
Yeah,
underpinning, all of it, which has, of course, gone global a long time ago.
yeah.
So the belief that with enough hard work, anybody can make it to the top. You're from the Netherlands, but you've been teaching in the US, as we've heard, for a while. Is that dream still shining as bright as ever there,
Mm.
or are there any cracks visible?
Yeah, there's certainly cracks visible. I mean, um, of course, the most students I see are students in sociology, meaning that there's some self-selection there. Of course, I don't get to speak to too many students who, by virtue of their major, are on a very different trajectory. But I've had a fair amount of economics students and physics students and engineers and such in my classrooms as well over the years now, and I do think that belief in meritocracy is definitely um, a lot more nuanced and a lot more under a lot more tension. Now that said, even though that's my experience, when I look at the survey evidence, I'm not seeing that translate to a real generational change. There are some signs that young people today are just more critical of the American dream and such, but it's not translating to the aggregate when you look at these long-term survey waves. If anything, believe in meritocracy seems to be strengthening, right? And I think believe in meritocracy and believe in the American dream are very, very similar, share a lot of features. So I think that what has changed is people's perception of their economic reality and um, a change perspective on what is required to achieve some sense of economic stability, right? So I think people realize now that just going to college is not. So in that sense, the good old American dream of doing okay in school or getting a union job and then buying your suburban home with picketed fence and etc. That idea, um, that version of the American dream is definitely gone, right? I think a lot of people don't believe in that anymore. But do they really? Have they stopped believing that through hard work, effort, and talent, you could, you could achieve your dreams? That's where I think people still have a lot of um, you know, unfortunately, sometimes naive belief that maybe the structural reality is such, but they, with their hard work, with their talents, can be the exception to the rule. And that's yeah, that's sometimes painful because we know, statistically speaking, that current generations of Americans um, have about a 50-50 chance of doing better than their parents, economically speaking. So one out of two, Americans in this sort of generation is going to experience downward mobility. Right? If you look at the baby boomers, for the baby boomers, it was 90% end up doing better than their parents. Right? So we see, in that sense, the American dream has completely collapsed. But I'm not sure if that's how people experience it on the ground, unfortunately.
That famous John Steinbeck quote comes to mind: socialism never took root in America because the poor see themselves not as a exploited class, but as temporarily embarrassed millionaires. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
that rings true to this day, but probably globally, not just for the US.
I do think that yeah. So right, sort of the definitely the cultural impact of American um, entertainment industry
Yeah.
and political narratives, etc., has far wider reach. So that's a big part of that for sure. But there's also a really strong psychological need for people to indeed, particularly when they find themselves um, down and out, to believe that in the future, somewhere down the line, good things will happen to good people, or I'll somehow, eventually, I'll be rewarded. Karma, right? We have all these different notions that tell us that we just need to work keep trying and do good, and we will be rewarded. But unfortunately, that just simply is not the case for
In
some
my next
humans.
life, I'm gonna be Jeff Bezos. Finally.
That could be true. I have no way of testing that. Yeah.